Welcome to Sheepdog Nation Podcast, the only place on the internet where law enforcement and their families can come to be understood, supported, and stood up for. Here's your host, the always entertaining, down-to-earth, yet in-your-face truth speaker and Leo herself, Autumn Schmidt.
Chris, welcome to Sheepdog Nation Podcast. We're really excited to have you here. I'm really excited to introduce you to all of Sheepdog Nation. Can you do me a favor and do us a favor and tell us a little bit about yourself?
So thanks, Autumn, for having me on your podcast. I follow it quite religiously, so it's quite an honor to be on it. So a little bit about me. I grew up in Northern California. I left there when I was 14. Sailed around the world with my parents to the South Pacific and such, and then ended up here in New Zealand, where a short time later, a couple years later, I joined the New Zealand police here. So then I did a couple years on frontline, a couple years on traffic, and then joined diplomatic protection, which is our version of Secret Service. So looked after prime ministers, some overseas diplomats, was on the prime minister's team when Vice President Biden was over here a couple years ago. So so that was kind of me. And then earlier this year, I resigned from the New Zealand police after going through some PTSD and depression due to the job and a lot of things that I saw and dealt with that we all deal with, which fucks us all up. And then after kind of recovering from that and a 3-month stint in the States refining myself, I decided to become a personal trainer. So now what I do is I do a lot of focusing on helping civilians join the sheepdog family and join the police and even military, fire, things like that if they need it, but mostly focusing towards the police side because I know what it takes to do it.
Absolutely. And I just want to say this too, and I just want to say that like I totally really, really, really admire and respect like the fact that you're willing to come on and be like, hey, I did all this stuff and like it fucked me up because, we as police officers, we're not trained to like be normal and human and admit that shit, And so it's really cool. It's really cool and admirable for you to be like, hey, yeah, like I saw some shit, fucked me up. Like I'll talk about it now, but so thank you. Thank you for being here.
Well, thanks, Autumn. Yeah, no, that's one thing that I found was probably the worst thing that I could have done is not talked about it. And I did that. I went through it all twice while I was in the police. First time, didn't talk about it at all. Best friend didn't even know about it. And I was seeing him at least every couple of weeks. He's also in the job. And then I told him the second time about 3 years after the first time. And he was like, you did what? Why didn't you tell me? So it's worse to not talk about it. It just binds it all up and makes things even worse. We don't need that. We're already under the microscope so much, anyways. That little things can help.
Absolutely, yeah. And thank you for that because it is so true, isn't it, man?
Yeah. We need to talk about it more, man. Yes, we need to be hard when we go to jobs and stuff like that. But as soon as we leave those jobs, we need to actually talk about the shit. I
do agree with that. And like, maybe not. I mean, I know they say humor is a coping mechanism. To some extent, I do agree. But then like, I don't know what your experience was, but I know my experience has been like, that's it. Like that was the extent of it. Like, we'd go to it. Like I've been to like a horrific scene and like everyone's like trying to deal with it and they're like cracking jokes and I'm like super offended. I'm like, whoa, like I am not ready to just like make light of this. Like can we talk about this? And nobody wants to talk about it. They're like,
no, they don't. They just they crack some jokes and go, yep, cool. Okay. Yep. Our black humor's come out. Yep. That's why we have it. And then they move on from it. And nobody actually deals with any of it. A few of my jobs that kind of really fucked me up were talking, was advising jobs. One of them telling someone my dad's age that his son had committed suicide while we were trying to find his son. Watching someone my dad's age drop to his knees, it sticks with you forever. And then also telling a wife and her daughter who was 16, telling the daughter was the worst part. The daughter started blaming herself and it sticks with you. And then I never talked about it. And, just kind of went, it's just part of the job. And then
Right. And it's like, I'm not normal if oh my God, like this is bothering me. I'm weak. Like I'm not
or
normal.
you go to your colleagues, I want to talk, you start to talk to them about it, and then they start to, what we call here, take the piss out of you. They
Mhm.
start to make fun of you, and then you become the joke, and so you just hold it in and you don't talk about it. And in my opinion, that needs to change, because it
Yeah.
just creates more stress, more anxiety, more depression. So
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly why my mission here at, Sheepdog Nation. And as you know, you've listened to me. I talk about anything and everything, and I'm pretty in your face about it because of that stigma, because of like, yeah, when there was times, I mean, hell, to be honest with you, I had to go see a fucking counselor when I was 10, because nobody would talk to me about shit. Like, I'm like,
yeah,
I need to talk. Like, I'm
yeah,
emotional. I'm having issues.
yeah.
Somebody fucking talk to me. And like, everyone was like, yeah, no,
And
nothing's
then
wrong, you know?
and then you come home, and you don't want to put the burden on your partner,
Yeah, yeah.
as well
Mhm.
as, I don't want to tell my partner about the person that I picked up off the railroad tracks.
Yeah, no, nope.
She doesn't need to know that. But
Mm-mm.
then you're like, who do I talk to? Because you can't talk
Mhm.
to your partner, you can't talk to your colleagues. So then you just stuff it in. And yeah, I think if we can change that mentality, I think that those horrible numbers of officers taking their own lives being more than getting taken by the people we're trying to arrest,
Mhm.
I think they can change. So hopefully we can do well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, you kind of just touched on it, but I just want to ask you. So, was that like the most stressful situation you think that you dealt with? Like, what would you consider?
So I'd say, yeah. So that was probably the final one. I mean, you know how it is in the police. Everything's very stressful. It was that, and also I had a female partner of mine who was in the job longer than I had been, get assaulted at a job.
Mm.
So the guy tried to run away, and she tried to stop him from going out the front door, and she got haymakered,
Oh, no.
knocked her back. I chased him, sprayed him with OC spray, and arrested him, caught him. But I took that one. That one was probably my turning point within the police a little bit, and that was probably one of the most stressful, trying to deal with that. It was, yeah, I took that quite close to the heart, because
Hmm.
in my mind it's protect females, not
Hmm.
let them get assaulted or assault them myself. So yeah, so I'd say that was probably one of mine, and then those other two are probably those three would probably be all on par with themselves with the most stressful jobs that I went to within the police, for me and for my mental health.
And like, so how did you deal with the stress? Like, let's talk about that. Like, we obviously know it's a stressful job. You've had some stressful situations. How'd you deal with it?
So those jobs at the time, I'd say I didn't. Um, at the time, I didn't really have any tools or anything that I knew how to use to deal with it. I mean, my coping mechanism was doing, which I've come to learn the actual name of it, but box breathing.
Mhm.
So I used to do similar stuff like that, the slow in through your nose, out through your mouth. Used to do that through all the years in fitness and that as well. And even swimming and that when I was competitive when I was a kid. And so I used to do that a lot anytime I'd get in kind of stressful situations, just kind of slow myself down.
Mhm.
Back then, when I was in the police, my release was either going shooting,
Mhm.
to some range therapy, or I would just work on. I've got always had 4-wheel drive, so I used to just do that.
Mm. That's awesome. I love so much that, you were able to find different things to, like occupy your mind, and that you found things to do that, you know, didn't let you dwell on the job. I just think that so many times, especially sheepdogs, we find a way to just, we need to find a way to just not dwell, right? So like the thing is like having the hobbies, and like I know you're going to tell us obviously about your fitness journey and stuff like that, but like, having the hobbies and having things to take your mind off of the shit for a while, also I think is really beneficial.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. Like I said, I used to do, work on my four-wheel drive, things like that. The one thing that I think I could have worked on more is doing more things for myself to
Mm,
help with the stress. The most important thing that I've come to find out after leaving the police and that is you have to do something for you every day.
mm-hmm,
Whether that's, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, half the day, a whole day on on one of your rostered days off or on your days off, you have to do at least something for yourself, even if it's 5 minutes of box breathing.
mm-hmm,
Because if if you're not doing something for yourself, then just everything becomes overwhelming
mm,
and you get you're a lot more susceptible to stress.
mm-hmm. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I love that. And the box breathing, which I absolutely love because Mark Devine talked about that on the podcast too. So
Yeah, that's where I learned the name of it. I used to always, even my clients now that I'm trying to get into police, after they'd run a, mile and a half or a 2.4K as it is here, I'd always be like, okay, cool. In through your nose, out through your mouth, slow your breathing down. And until I listened to his podcast, and then I was like, oh, it's box breathing.
it's
That's
box
exactly what
breathing.
I'm doing.
Yeah.
You can put a name on it now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. That's awesome. Okay. And so like, let me ask you this. So now that like you're not in the like now that you're not there, like do you find yourself more stressed, less stressed, and like how do you deal with it?
So I'm a lot less stressed because I make myself a lot less stressed.
Imagine that.
Imagine that, yeah. So like I find sometimes I'll find myself, you feel like you're spinning like a Tasmanian devil or, like a top. And you're just like, and I go, okay, I'm getting a little bit overwhelmed here. Slow
Hmm.
myself down, take a few deep breaths. And
Hmm.
then I go, okay, cool. Why did I get like that? And I try and change it because if I get too overwhelmed and stressed for too long, if I go like that for a couple of weeks, then I just plummet. And
Hmm.
so I keep myself not stressed. My coping mechanisms are a bit different now than they were within the police, but even in the police, fitness was always my thing. If I could go get hot and sweaty and make myself tired
Hmm.
physically,
Hmm.
I would release everything afterwards. I'd feel so much better. And so that's my thing now as well, as if I'm getting stressed, I do that.
And like, what was your favorite? Like, what's your favorite kind of workout to like relieve stress? Like, would you say it's a like? And the reason why I'm asking you like that is because there's been a lot of different. There's been like a lot of different research and like a lot of different trains of thought. Like some people talk about like, oh, I need to go and like I need to lift weights and I need to pick things up and put them down, like heavy things. Other people are like, oh no, I need to like go run. And we have some people who enjoy like CrossFit, some people who enjoy like the hit running, um, and stuff like that. So I'm just curious to see, Chris, what your favorite kind of workout is.
My favorite kind of workout, it changes. So I do like to do kind of what would be called a hypertrophy type training. So you're kind of higher reps, so that kind of 10 to 12 reps,
Mm-hmm.
heavy, and where I'll get the sweat going. So 1 minute rests if you're doing that. Yeah, so like say like a workout would be I'd even superset sometimes. So anything that's kind of that higher intensity, but not quite a CrossFit, because I've seen too many people get injured with CrossFit. But
Mm-hmm.
that kind of style, that that higher intensity type stuff. But then I'll need to mix it up, and so then I do like what I do now is a lot of powerlifting type stuff. Just because with that high intensity stuff, I have been known to get a little injured over the years from going a little bit too hard.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Um, okay, and so let me ask you this. So you've been around, you've seen some things, you've been a cop, you've done some really cool things while you've been a cop. Now you train cops to like get in, which I think is so badass, physically and mentally, because you're a PT. I think that's so cool. I think that your story is really cool too. Can you like share a little bit about that? I don't think we touched on it, just how you did say it, but can you just share a little bit with Sheepdog Nation, like how like you went through a tough time and it was okay. Like you went and you went and you went to the States and you took some time to like find yourself. Can you like touch upon that?
So I was probably in the police about 3 years, and I started going through all my a bit of PTSD type stuff, feeling alone, feeling anxiety, and that it wasn't as bad back then, but it was more my wife who noticed it on me. She's like, "You're completely different." So I actually sought help. I was one of the few that actually do. And so I went to the police counselor, went to a counselor, and that, even though I knew that it could, hinder me later on in my career,
Mm-hmm.
but which is sad, but we can get on that later on.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, so I went through stuff then, yep, and thought I dealt with it all. Still had that thing of I wanted to run away. I wanted to come back to the States. I didn't care if it was as a cop, if it was what I was wanting to come back to the States. And looking back, it was me wanting to run away. Then what would that have been? About 4 years later, it all came back up, but this time with a vengeance because I hadn't actually dealt with it properly. So wife and I going through even more stuff, almost getting a divorce at the time. It was that bad.
And thank you for sharing that, because I'm going to tell you how many cops have gone through that. I think we all think that, one, it'll never happen to us, and then two, when it does happen to us, like, we just think we are so fucked up and we're the only ones, and we just must be so fucked up. And the truth is like, no, man, like we all go through shit. And like, so thank you for like just sharing and being so real, Chris, because people need to hear this.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be complete. You want to hear real? I got to a point at that second time that I almost cheated on my wife.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where in my head, I was sitting there looking at a girl, talking to her, and my wife knows all of this because I came to her literally like 2 days later and went, "This happened."
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at this girl. She was showing interest in me, not because I was a cop. She knew me kind of through some friends. And I was like, whoa, why am I having these thoughts? Why am I thinking like this is fully against my morals? And then the next thing was, it was counseling. And it was like, I need help. We need help. Something's going on. And I know so many cops that have given into that. They've gone down that road. And I know, like, when I first went to the counselor turned to both my wife and I and went, most couples won't make it through this unless they're really strong and they're both wanting to make it through. And so that's something, a lot of cops I know, and sheepdogs, not even just cops, but first responders in general, and even military, and that go through all that because it's somebody showing interest to them. But just remember, the grass is greener, as it looks greener on the other side, but it's same shit, different person. Unless you deal with your own shit, you're not going to be able to. It's going to be the same shit, different person, no matter what. There are circumstances where it's not necessarily, but so going on with my story. So we got counseling. I went to the counselor, and the counselor turned to me after both my wife and I kind of told what was going on, and she goes, "You're burned out. You need a break from the police. You need to step away for a little while to refill your tank. If you don't, then you're just going to keep circling the drain. If not, get worse, become one of those stats." She didn't say that, but looking back on it, that's what she kind of was insinuating. I was so bad at that time that I believed she hated cops and she was trying to get me to leave the police. I didn't think she was trying to help me, and I thought she just hated cops. About a month later, by the time we went to the States, a little bit later for a holiday, we had come up with a plan that I was going to take a couple months and come back to the States on my own and just refine myself. So, it was still bad enough by the time I left to go to the States that I thought people were following me. I was back there in the States and for a holiday with my wife before I came back on my own, and I was driving to a friend's house and saw a Tahoe driving behind me, and I was like, he's following me, and I even pulled over to let him pass me to see if he was following me. So it can get that bad. So I came back. I did 8,000 US miles, started in my hometown of Redding, Northern California, and drove all the way to Houston, going through Nevada, Utah, Colorado, all that, and then turned around and came back. So I did a big circle. And yeah, so I refound myself, came back to New Zealand, and was better, but not perfect. It's been a long road. I still have bad days, as we all do. They're not as many though. To your morals when you're in, know that sometimes you're going to be challenged. And the biggest thing, and I was told it, and you'll all be told it at academy or police college, whichever one it's called, wherever you are, is do your own stuff and keep people that are outside of the police, because it keeps you real. Even if it comes down to being as blunt to them, saying, look, I'm not at work, I don't want to talk about it. Your first year, you're going to be ecstatic about it. I'm sure you were as well, Autumn. All you want to do is talk about it. It's sometimes best to actually not, because general public civilians don't understand it. They think it's awesome. They think it's cool, but all they see is the glory. They don't see the guts.
100%.
So keep it real. Keep friends outside of law enforcement, as well as do something every day that's for yourself, that's not just surrounded around work. So that's kind of some of the things that I'd recommend that I didn't do enough of, that I think will help. And yeah, enjoy it. It's still fun. It's, and look after each other. We've lost that so much. I mean, I don't know about there in the States, but I know here in New Zealand, in the last 4 or 5 years, it has just gone in the toilet. There is no camaraderie at all. It is every man for himself, which is, I know all the people I'm training will be different. They'll look after each other, but it's real bad. So yeah, look after each other, help each other out.
Yep, absolutely. Things I preach all the time. Great advice. And is there anything else that you would like to leave Sheepdog Nation with?
So yeah, if you're needing help with that mental health side of things or anything, reach out. Don't try and be RoboCop. We're not machines. We're humans. We're meant to have emotion. We're meant to have feelings. Use those on the street, man. They saved my life when I did use them so many times. I mean, I have colleagues of mine that have, they've had to spray people. They've had to, over here, we don't have to, we don't draw our guns quite as often, but they've had to draw their gun when they've had it on them and stuff like that. And everybody's like, how did you only spray one person in 7 years? And it's because I used my mouth and my intuition. So, be smart, be humble, and yeah, if you need help, seek it out. I'm here, Autumn's here. We've all been there, we've done it, and we're willing to help, and yeah, just seek help is the biggest thing, because you'll all go through it. You'll go through it one day or another, whether you know it or not.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. It's huge. And thank you for being, so humble about that. And Sheepdogs, seriously, take us up on it, take us up on it. And, because I know there's some people listening to this, and some of you are going, I'm not fucking soft. They're fucking soft. What's wrong with them? Right. and maybe
I used to be that person.
Me too. I totally was. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with them? A bunch of babies. But no, once, truly the shit compounds over time. And I think that, we have to be this person when we're on duty, and even when we're off duty, we come home and we still need to be Superman or Superwoman. And, but who's that going to be to us? Who's our Superman and our Superwoman? We need someone to lean on too, and so, reach out, even if you just want to talk, and, to either one of us. And Chris has a really good program. He's a PT. He helps people de-stress through moving. And Chris and I have had multiple conversations around this about, when you heard him today. So make sure you reach out. All of his contact information, you're going to be able to get a hold of him. It's going to be below in the show notes. But Chris, if you'd like to share how people can get a hold of you.
So I'm on Instagram and Facebook, as well as I've got a website. It's Knocking Demon Fitness. .co.nz. So that knocking demon is just so you know, it's nothing to do with satanic or anything like that. It's the demon. For me, I put a label on that depression, the anxiety, and that it's the demon. He's knocking at my door, or he's sitting there waiting to try and knock the fucker in. So, I do everything I can to strengthen that door so that demon doesn't get through that door.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Kristen. We will be putting all of your handles and below in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciated it. I loved how honest you were. And I think a lot of sheepdogs needed to hear this.
Thanks, Autumn. And it was awesome. Thanks again for the opportunity.
And that was another episode of Sheepdog Nation. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes and let us know by giving us a rating. If you have questions that you want answered by Autumn in the podcast, submit it by going to the link in the show notes. As always, stay safe and watch your six.